What is up, everyone? Jay here with another Fire Emblem Heroes video, and today I'm going to be doing a breakdown and analysis of Brave Marth's weapon refined for Genesis Falchion. So just going to be sharing my thoughts and opinions and first impressions on this weapon refined, because this of course has been highly anticipated by not only me but other Brave Marth users and Marth fans. And I mean, every Choose Your Legends refined patch is always highly anticipated, and this weapon refined definitely was needed because Brave Marth, he definitely needs something to help keep up with not only the crazy metagame of FEH, but also the crazy sword inventories that have released, especially this year, like Lucia, Diamant, Summer Fjorm. So he needs to keep up, because at some point I think Brave Marth was a top 5 sword inventory in my opinion around 2022, and even when he came out, he was arguably the best one. A lot of people slept on him when he came out, and then they found out that he's one of the best god swords, and he's still, even before this refine, I still think he had his place, right? He was still like maybe top 15, 20, maybe top 10. He's still great because Genesis Falchion is a pretty stacked weapon, but at this point the effects that are in the weapon definitely need some improvements, and this weapon refine does improve in some aspects. So if you just want to know my short and sweet answer to the question, do you think this weapon refine is good? My answer is yes. I think it's a good weapon refine, but it's not good enough, not nearly good enough, unfortunately. This weapon refine fails to address some of his biggest weaknesses and some of his core issues, like panic effects and stuff, and I'll get into those effects. But let's just look at the refine and run down the weapons. So Genesis Falchion, of course, the base effect pretty much stays the same except for 2 things that are added on. So -1 cooldown he keeps, of course, effectiveness against dragons. If he initiates combat within 2 space of an ally, he grants plus $5 stats, and also grants effects to himself based on the total value of bonuses on the 3 allies with the highest bonus totals, excluding himself. So if it's greater than or equal to 10, he has the full no follow-up, which he had before, but now he also gets no guard on top of that. So that's pretty great because he wants to trigger Shining Emblem as much as he can. So that's good. No guard's always nice to have. And he also gets an additional plus 5 attack if it's greater than or equal to 25, and also gets 7 HP healing. So that's the second thing that has changed, is now he gets an extra 2 HP healing, which is definitely needed because most modern weapons these days, if you're going to get healing in it, it's going to be 7 HP healing. So he definitely needed that to be updated, because before it was only 5. So 2 HP might seem like not that much, but it's going to go a long way for a tank like Brave Marth, who's trying to reduce damage and just take hits in general. So healing is always good. So he does get the 7 HP healing, which I did mention in my previous video talking about my hopes and expectations. So at least they did that for the bare minimum, just the extra 2 HP. And of course, the last part, which is the advantage part, if it's greater than or equal to 60, then he can counterattack before the foe's first attack if they attack him. So the base effect is largely the same. Like I mentioned, it's just 2 effects have changed: the extra HP healing and no guard. So that's good. Unfortunately, they have not changed the buff requirements, because I know some people wanted that to be improved. Personally, for me, I don't mind it being the same, because I don't think it's that hard to get 60 buffs. Obviously there's stuff like panic and all that, but in my experience it's not too hard, especially if you have something like Time's Pulse, which I do have on mine. You can trigger Shining Emblem pretty much every hit, or every time you initiate at least, or when they attack you, as long as they don't pulse smoke you or have like a scowl skill. You can trigger Shining Emblem pretty consistently most of the time. But I can understand why people wanted the buff requirements to be a little lower. So maybe, like, I don't know, greater than or equal to 50 would have been nicer for sure, but they didn't touch any of that. The only thing they touch is the HP and no guard. So that is the base effect. And then onto the actual weapon refined in the green text. At the start of combat, if he's alive or greater than or equal to 25% HP, he grants further stats to all his stats, x equal to 5. So he essentially has a free plus $5 stats, and it can go furthermore. So it's plus $10 stats, and then it can go higher depending on the bonus on each stat between unit and allies within 2 spaces of him, and then calculates each stat bonus independently. And then furthermore, he reduces damage from the foe's first attack by 40% during combat. First attack normally means only the first strike, but for effects that grant brave effects like unit attacks twice, it means the first and second strike. So that's good against Catcher units or Catcher balls, Bride Catcher teams and stuff like that, or any kind of strong brave unit. He can reduce those hits. So that's pretty much the weapon refine. Small change to the base effect, and then a new effect on the green text for the actual weapon refine. So it's kind of like a friend blade tome, kind of, where it's depending. Again, Genesis Falchion is a weapon that relies on Marth's allies and their buffs. So it's good that this gives him extra stats, because he is a stat ball, and further stats is never bad. So depending on those buffs between himself and his allies, he can get further stats, and doing some testing, he can easily get you know, like plus 20 or higher stats. So that's good. And the damage reduction goes a long way because he never had damage reduction in the weapon. He had always had to rely on Spurn or some other source like Speed Smoke to get damage reduction. So this 40% is nice because it doesn't require a speed check or anything. It's just straight up 40% damage reduction. So that's good. But of course, it's still pierceable by lethality and things like that. So that's pretty much the weapon refine. Now I'm going to go into some effects that I wish were on it and why I don't think it's the best weapon refine. So first, just from the top, I really wish the range, the condition within 2 spaces of an ally was actually 3 spaces of an ally, right? Because most modern weapons these days, not most, but a lot of modern weapons these days have an easy 3 space condition. That would have been really good for Brave Marth, especially if you use him like me as a frontliner. I don't use him as an omni tank that much these days, you know, as like a vantage sweeper with distant counter as much as I used to, because I just pair him with Winter Marth to cover the far save matchups, and then just have Brave Marth cover the melee matchups as a frontliner, right? So having 3 spaces would have been so nice. I really wish they gave him that leniency, because 2 spaces, I mean, yes, it's doable, but 3 spaces would have really helped him a lot. You know, I use him with close call so he can retreat back after the hit and run, and then maybe get back into range, because you want him to be close as his allies as possible, right? So 3 spaces would have been really good. I wish they were a little more lenient on that condition. It's just still 2 spaces, which is unfortunate, and you know, I thought that'd be the bare minimum. Maybe not as much as the 7 HP healing boost, but still, I really wish it was 3 spaces. That would have helped a lot. So that's something I wish was on it. Next is Null Panic. Null Panic status or some kind of Null Panic effect would have been so good for Brave Marth, because as I mentioned with the buff conditions, a lot of people wish it was lower, but for me, like I said, I don't mind it being the same. It's just I wish he had something like Null Panic to help his weapon be more consistent against stuff like Panic, so he can actually get the most out of his weapon, right? So Null Panic would have been amazing. If I can trade one of these effects, one of the new effects, I'd probably trade Null Guard for Null Panic. I think that would have been better for him. Because Null Guard, while it's good, you know, you have Time's Pulse, you can trigger Shining Emblem. There's other ways to get Null Guard or just trigger it better or faster, more easily, of course. So I would have taken Null Panic over Null Guard, even though both of those effects are good. Null Panic would have helped Brave Marth, I think, better in the long run. So I really wish he had Null Panic. Yes, you can give him support from Ashira and stuff, but just if he had that self-sustain, that would have been so good, because I don't really use Ashira that much. So yeah, Null Panic would have been, that's one of the biggest effects that I really wish was on this weapon refine. Next, this was a pipe dream. I mentioned it in my video about the hopes and expectations, but speed-based true damage reduction, I knew it wasn't likely, and of course it didn't happen, but that would have been so good for Brave Marth as a tank, because it would have helped him have, you know, on top of the regular damage reduction, you know, he wouldn't be able to have or be pierceable by Deadeye or Lethality if he had that, because we only have 2 sources right now in the game of true damage reduction. That is defense, that started with Asker and now is on Brave Dimitri, Har, a handful of units, and then the resistance version, which is on Legendary Guinevere. So if Brave Marth got the first one of speed, that would have been amazing, but of course they didn't give it to him. But they definitely could have given him at least some true damage. That's something I would have loved to see, because that would help not only with his damage output, but also help his vantage sweeping, because yes, he can get more stats, but true damage is always good to have. So I wish he got maybe like 15 to 20% true damage based on his speed. That would have been good. He doesn't get any special spiral effect, which would have been cool to see, because he can loop you know, Shining Emblem a little easier, though. I mean, Time's Pulse exists, so there's that, but if you had special spiral in the weapon, that would kind of alleviate the use of Time's Pulse 4, I suppose. Or you can be a little bit more flexible in the C. Special spiral would have been cool. And then speaking of special spiral, damage reduction piercing would have been amazing to have on him, because that's pretty much his other weakness, biggest weakness besides, you know, panic effects and stuff like that, is being able to pierce through damage reduction, which he doesn't have any capabilities unless of course you pair him with a Leer. So, you know, stuff like Remote Sparrow or just units that have tons of damage reduction, that can really trouble Marth, and that can be a hurdle for him. So what I wanted to see personally, because I did mention in my previous video that I wanted him maybe to not get damage reduction piercing based off a special, because so many sword inventories have it at this point, but I would have loved to have the halving damage reduction piercing, like physical no follow-up, or what Brave Marianne has. That would be really good, at least to help a little bit, because he already has no follow-up in the weapon, and having some halving of the damage reduction would have gone a long way. That would have been so good for Brave Marth, but unfortunately he doesn't get that. And then the next, I guess, I suppose the third issue that he can have is also, debuffs. I mean, it kind of goes with No Panic. Unity, he doesn't get Unity. He doesn't get penalty neutralization. But I did mention, I'm kind of glad he doesn't have Unity, because that would take away from his legendary version, which already has Unity. So I'm glad he doesn't have Unity. I suppose he could have gotten penalty neutralization, but then that would have made him incompatible with legendary Robin. So there's that. So I'm kind of glad, I guess, in both ways he didn't get penalty neutralization, but that's why I want to No Panic, so at least he can have that. That would have really done it for me. But yeah, I'm glad he doesn't have Unity, but that would have helped, of course. I wouldn't complain if it happened, but yeah. So Unity, penalty neutralization effects are not here. And then I did mention, of course, the buff requirements are still the same, so that's kind of unfortunate. Could have been nice to be lower. And then I guess the last thing you could have used is No See Disrupt, maybe, to deal with fire sweep effects or healers, like, dual release and stuff. But obviously you can run No See Disrupt 4 in the B slot, which is pretty good, and it helps. It stacks on top of his damage reduction in the refine, so that's good. Oh, I forgot to mention one more thing. The last thing that could have been crazy, one of the juicier effects would have been the reverse desperation. I mentioned that in my briefly in my previous video, but reverse desperation would have been crazy, because his winter version already has that as a range unit, and imagine if he could do that as a melee unit. That would have made him pretty unique, but I knew it wasn't likely. Because his playstyle would have to change drastically, just like Winter Marth did, right? Because when Winter Marth got Tangrista refined, he changed from a player phase armor to just a pure enemy phase Vantage Sweeper. So it was a kind of a drastic change. So if Brave Marth got that too, that would have been crazy, but he didn't get it. So those are pretty much like the main effects. The juicy ones that I really wanted was No Panic, speed-based true damage reduction, or some kind of damage reduction piercing. Unfortunately, he didn't get any of those. So that's pretty much the refine. Definitely leave some things to be desired. I mean, you can't win them all. I mean, that's the thing about Genesis Falchion, is it's already a pretty stacked weapon, especially at the time it was released, or the first 2 years, before all the crazy new sorties came out. Because it's still like a pretty good weapon. Like I said, I think Brave Marth is still like a top 10 to 20 sword infantry. It's just I wish he got more on this, like maybe one or two more effects, or one of the effects replaced, because yes, he's a better unit now for sure. He's a better stat ball, he's a better tank, he's a better Vantage Sweeper now. And that's the cool part about Brave Marth, is he can tank and also Vantage Sweep. But the refine unfortunately does not address some of his core issues, like the ones I mentioned: panic effects, damage reduction. Still has the same buff requirements, but at least now that he has low guard, Shining Emblem is a little easier to trigger, so that's good. And at least the damage reduction in the refine does give him a little bit more flexibility, because before he had to kind of rely on Close Call 4 or Spurn or Speed Smoke 4 or some kind of dodge effect to survive some hits, because the refine didn't have that. But now that he has it, he can be a little bit more flexible. He can run something like Special Spiral 4 if you wanted to in the B slot, or I guess even a Bulwark skill or something. So there's that. So at least that's a silver lining for him. But he's still super reliant on his allies to get the most out of his weapon, and that's fine. I'm fine with that, because that's how Brave Marth is, and it's true to his character. It's just I wish he had No Panic to help ensure his weapon was more consistent, and that his weapon is activating the most it can. No Panic would have made a world of difference, but he did not get that or any of the juicy effects I wanted. So that's a weapon refine. I think it's okay. I think it's solid. It's good, but it's nothing amazing or game breaking or really crazy. And the CYL batch has been kind of tame for the most part. I think Brave Marianne got the best one, because she got pretty much everything she wanted. She got -1 cooldown. She got damage reduction halving, which I wanted for Brave Marth. She got null guard. She has further damage reduction, and her whole point is to initiate, maybe kill things, and trigger Requiem Dance. So Brave Marianne's a really good initiator now. Gatekeeper got some things. He got some healing. He can be a really good heal bot now, I guess. And he also has the true defense damage reduction, but he still doesn't have guaranteed follow-up. So he's kind of weak in that aspect, but he still has better support now, which is good. And Erica has a similar issue with Brave Marth, or that Brave Marth has, is that she can't pierce through damage reduction really, and that can really hinder her. So she does get more stats. She neutralizes foes' buffs and stops their guaranteed follow-up attacks, but that's not really needed on an offensive unit. I mean, yeah, they can help, but I guess she has the full no follow-up now. And it's kind of like if they have bonuses, then she punishes them for that, the visible bonuses. But just like Brave Marth, some of her core issues weren't addressed. So That's why I say Brave Marianne, I think, got the best refine out of the CYL5 winners. But hey, you can't win them all. I mean, I'm still going to use Brave Marth, of course. Don't get it twisted. I'm still going to use him a lot, and he's going to be a lot better now. But I just wish he got a really crazy refine. But like I said, Genesis Falchion was already pretty cracked, so I guess I shouldn't have expected it to be that crazy. But at least no panic, man. I really wish he got no panic. That would have made a world of difference. But yeah, I'll still be posting Marth clears, of course. That's actually the reason I haven't posted the legendary Lear clear yet, is because I wanted to see what Brave Marth's weapon refine was and see if he can like solo maps. But I mean, maybe he can now, but you know, he's not the craziest weapon refine, so I just wish it addressed some more of his issues. But it is what it is. So let me know what you guys think about Brave Marth's weapon refine. You know, what kind of effects you add on to it. I've already explained pretty much everything I wanted on it. That would have been really cool, but the effects he got, while they're good, they're nothing amazing in my opinion. But you know, some test runs I did and a few maps I tried him out on, you know, he can definitely tank a lot better now. He feels way more beefy, which is great, of course. But a lot of sword of entries, and there's a lot of omni tanks in the game. And yes, he still has the Vantage niche, but then there's Fallen Byleth. At least the thing with Fallen Byleth is Brave Marth doesn't have to rely on speed checks, so he doesn't have to worry about speed creep, but he still has to worry about panic effects and stuff like that, which can be annoying for some people. But yeah, no panic would have been so good, but or some kind of DR piercing. But hey, that is that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. But that's the video, guys. You know, maybe I'll make like a showcase video on him. I don't know, we'll see. But I'll definitely be doing some more testing and stuff with the weapon refine. But again, let me know what you guys think about the weapon refine, or what you think about the batch overall, or the other weapon refines. Leave a like if you enjoyed listening to me ramble. As always, please stay safe out there. Peace out.